Hey, what's up YouTube? This is Coach Calin with Technician Basketball, and today I'd like to talk about the true difference between a one-motion and a two-motion jump shot. So I wanted to talk about this because I've seen a lot of videos and discussions about this, and no one really seems to agree even on what a one-motion jump shot is and what a two-motion jump shot is. And people tend to give advice based on these really unclear ideas, and I actually think this advice can often be harmful to players who are trying to become better shooters or better scorers. So with this video, I want to go over some common definitions for one motion and two motion jump shots, and then I'm going to show exactly how I think they're either inconsistent or just don't make any sense at all. And at the end of the video, I'm going to talk about how I think you should think about these concepts and how I believe my way of thinking will help you improve your game. So the first common definition that I see is distinct motions. From a basic sense, this is just saying that one motion shooters have only one motion and two motion shooters have, as you would think, two motions in their jump shots. And this sounds reasonable, but when you actually look at how people differentiate between different jump shot forms, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. And what people will usually say is that two motion shooters have a set point that is above their head, and that the ball goes backwards before it goes forward, meaning that the first motion in their shot is the ball going backwards, and the second motion is them finishing the shot with it going back forwards and up. And one motion shooters are characterized by having a set point in front of their head, and by the fact that the ball goes, instead of back and then forward, it goes just straight up and through in one motion. So first of all, yes, obviously some players have set points that are above their heads and some have set points that are in front of their foreheads. However, it's totally ridiculous to say, in my opinion, that only players with high set points bring the ball back before it goes back forward. In fact, almost every single player you watch does this to some degree. Unless your set point is really far out from your body, or for some reason your elbows are flared like really far out wide, you have to bring the ball back physically in order to get it anywhere near your head at a normal shooting set point. So let's look at some footage of Kobe, who has a pretty high set point above his head, and you can see that as he starts his shot, he has the ball away from his body, and as he begins his shot, he brings it up to a set point above his head before he finishes his shot by going back forwards. So a lot of people will consider Kobe a two-motion shooter based off the definition we already talked about, right? His set point is high above his head, and he clearly brings the ball backwards before he brings the ball back up and through and finishes his shot. However, if we look at another player who pretty much everyone can agree is a one-motion shooter, and I'm talking about Steph Curry here, we can see that he does the exact same thing. So we can see with his shot here that at the beginning of his shot, the ball starts out away from his body, at least like a foot or two away from his body, but once he's started going through his shot and the ball reaches his set point, it's clearly had to go backwards in order to get to his forehead. So after looking at these two shooters, I think as far as distinct motion goes as a way to define one motion jump shots versus two motion jump shots, they both pretty much have the same two motions in their jump shot: bring the ball to the set point and then release the shot. And to talk a little bit more about set points, I actually think in general set points are just a poor way to classify jump shot forms because it's almost entirely arbitrary. All set points are located somewhere on a spectrum of either being really low or really high and far back behind your head, and you can't really pick some line and say that certain types of shooters are on one side of the line and other types of shooters on the other, because as we just showed, this isn't necessarily meaningful at all, and you can always find players who contradict this or just lie directly on the line, and that just kind of makes the whole classification meaningless. The next definition that I want to talk about is release timing. People that use this definition will say that two motion shooters release the ball at the top of their jump and hold it at their set point for some period of time. These players also generally jump very high on their jump shots. Some common examples of this that people use are Russell Westbrook for a two motion jump shot because he jumps really high in the air and releases it at the top of his jump usually, or Stephen Curry, who usually releases the ball really early in his jump and just does not jump very high off the ground. On the other hand, one motion shooters release the ball sometime earlier in their jump and usually don't jump very high at all. The problem that I have with this definition is that players will use different release timings in different situations. And so you can't really use release timing as a way to just entirely classify the way that player shoots. So first let's look at some footage of Kevin Durant here, shooting after curling off of a screen. And we can see that he clearly holds the ball at a set point before he releases for the shot. And so if we just looked at this, we would think that he has a two-motion shot, right? But let's compare this to a later shot in the same game where he doesn't get off the ground much at all, and there clearly isn't any pause at his set point, and the ball just continues in just one fluid motion through his shot. Now let's also look at Kobe, who usually gets called a two-motion shooter for people who use this same definition. So looking at this shot by Kobe, we can see that he clearly isn't getting very high off the ground at all. And if we look at the same shot from a different angle, we can also see that he isn't really holding the ball at a set point either. Another good example is from Damian Lillard, who pretty much everyone always calls a one-motion shooter. But if we look at this shot, we can see he clearly gets very high off the ground and holds the ball at his set point for a solid amount of time before he releases the shot. So my point with these examples is to show that many different players shoot both ways with both release types and release timings depending on what they find most comfortable or what's called for by that specific situation. Because of this, it doesn't really make a lot of sense, in my opinion, to try to label players as having either one or the other, since it's obviously more complex and more fluid than that, and very few players actually truly shoot in just one way. So those are the main definitions that I wanted to talk about. And there might be more that are used, but generally these can all be debunked for similar reasons, or at least all the definitions that I've seen can be. So what's the point of all this? Am I just being nitpicky? Yeah, probably a little. But I think that players get caught up thinking about this topic and taking what people say to heart, and that can actually end up limiting them in how they work on their game. For example, a lot of young players want to shoot like Steph or shoot like Damian Lillard, so they try to learn a one-motion shot. Then they go watch some YouTube video saying that one-motion shooters don't jump high on their shot and they don't release the ball at the top of their jump, and so they decide that they shouldn't ever work on that either, and they should never develop that as a weapon they can use in their game. However, as we've seen, these pro players like Dame use these different kind of release timings in different situations, and they can be beneficial in certain situations, like shooting off the dribble or out of triple threat. So my main point is that we shouldn't treat this idea of one motion or two motions as actually a shot mechanic, but as just kind of an arbitrary label that some people like to use. And if you want to become a better shooter or scorer, you shouldn't limit yourself, and you should do your own research, make up your own mind, and use that information to work on your own game. Okay, so that's all I have actually. If you made it to the end, thank you so much for watching. If you liked the video or thought it was useful, please subscribe or hit the like button below. I want to keep making content similar to this for you guys, so any support you give is definitely appreciated. Additionally, if you have any thoughts or concerns or questions, or you really just disagree with something I said, please leave a comment below. We can start talking about it, get a little discussion going, and see what happens. So that's it for me. Thanks for watching, and have a good one.